Christmas Sleep, a real, scary, true horror story. It was December 24th, and the small town of White Pines was covered in a thick blanket of snow. Lights twinkled on every house, carolers roamed the streets, and the warmth of the holiday spirit filled the air. For Anna, a college student visiting her hometown for the holidays, this was supposed to be a peaceful Christmas Eve with her family. But things took a dark turn when she agreed to house-sit for the mysterious Jenkins family down the road. The Jenkins family was known for their strange behavior. They were quiet, rarely seen in public, and their house, a massive Victorian mansion, was rumored to be haunted. Locals whispered stories about eerie sounds, flickering lights, and the faint cries of a child that could sometimes be heard late at night. Anna didn't believe in ghosts, though, and the pay was too good to pass up. She arrived at the house around 7 p.m., carrying a small bag and her laptop, ready to spend the night keeping an eye on the place. Mrs. Jenkins had told her not to worry about the strange noises and to stay out of the basement, which Anna brushed off as eccentricity. The eerie beginning. The house was as cold inside as it was outside. The old wooden floors creaked under her feet, and the wind howled through the cracks in the windows. Anna settled on the couch in the living room, wrapping herself in a blanket. As the clock struck 9, she noticed that the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. She dismissed it as her imagination and focused on the TV, which played a cheerful Christmas movie. But then the lights flickered. She stared at the chandelier above her, its crystals swaying slightly as if touched by an invisible hand. Suddenly, there was a loud thud from upstairs. Anna froze. She remembered Mrs. Jenkins had said the house would make noises, but this sounded deliberate, like footsteps. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. No response. The whispering shadows. Determined to prove there was nothing to fear, Anna climbed the grand staircase, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The hallway was lined with old family portraits, their eyes seeming to follow her every move. At the end of the hall, a door creaked open slowly. She approached it cautiously, pushing it open to reveal a small, dusty bedroom. The bed was made, but there was a strange imprint on the pillow, as if someone had been lying there moments ago. As she turned to leave, she heard it, a faint whisper, "Help me." Her heart raced as she scanned the room, but no one was there. The whisper grew louder, more desperate. She bolted from the room, slamming the door behind her, and ran back downstairs. The forbidden basement by midnight, Anna was on edge. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified. She decided she couldn't stay in the house anymore. As she grabbed her coat, she heard the basement door creak open. Mrs. Jenkins had been clear. Stay out of the basement, but curiosity got the better of her. Flashlight in hand, she descended the creaking stairs into the darkness. The air was icy, and the smell of damp earth filled her nostrils. At the bottom, she saw something that made her stomach drop. An old rocking chair moving back and forth on its own. Behind it, a small wooden door stood ajar. As she approached, the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. She pushed the door open to reveal a tiny room with a single child's bed. On the wall, or written in what looked like blood, were the words, "They took me on Christmas Eve." The haunting revelation. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her. The whispers turned into screams, and the air grew so cold, her breath turned to mist. She banged on the door, screaming for help, but it wouldn't budge. Then, she saw her. A little girl, no older than 6, standing in the corner. Her eyes were hollow, her dress tattered and stained. "They won't let you leave," the girl said, her voice echoing unnaturally. Anna tried to run, but the girl's icy hand gripped her wrist. "You have to help me," she pleaded. "They're coming back." Before Anna could respond, the basement filled with a deafening roar. Shadows swirled around her, and the girl disappeared. The door flung open, and Anna scrambled up the stairs, slamming it shut behind her. Escape and aftermath. Anna didn't stay to find out what would happen next. She ran out into the snow, abandoning her bag and the house altogether. The next morning, she told her parents what had happened. They didn't believe her, of course, dismissing it as a bad dream. But Anna couldn't shake the memory of the little girl's face or the whispers that still echoed in her mind. A week later, news broke that the Jenkins family had returned home to find their basement destroyed. When questioned, they admitted the house had a dark history. A child from the original owners had gone missing on Christmas Eve decades ago, and her body was never found. Anna never returned to White Pines after that Christmas. But every December, she dreams of that little girl, still trapped in the basement, waiting for someone to set her free. After the incident at the Jenkins house, Anna tried to move on. She returned to college, hoping the familiar routine would distract her from the horrifying memories. But the nightmares followed her. Every night, she dreamed of the little girl in the basement, her hollow eyes staring, and her whispered plea echoing, "They won't let you leave." By mid-January, Anna was barely sleeping. Her friends noticed her exhaustion, but she couldn't bring herself to tell them the truth. Who would believe her? She considered therapy, but feared being labeled crazy. Then one evening, she received a package in the mail. It was from White Pines. Confused, Anna opened it to find a small antique music box with intricate carvings of snowflakes and holly. She didn't recognize it, but there was no note, no sender's name. When she opened the box, a haunting melody played, a tune that sent chills down her spine. It was the same melody she'd heard faintly in the Jenkins house that night. A new mystery. Anna's heart raced. She tried to convince herself it was a coincidence, maybe even a prank. But as she examined the box, she noticed something engraved inside the lid. "Find me before it's too late." That night, the dreams became worse. The little girl wasn't just whispering now. She was crying, begging Anna to help her. In the dream, Anna stood in the basement again, the blood-red words glowing on the wall. "They took me on Christmas Eve." When she woke up, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. It wasn't just fear. It was as if the little girl's anguish was seeping into her soul. Anna knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. She had to go back to White Pines. Return to White Pines. On a cold February morning, Anna drove back to her hometown. The town looked just as she had left it, but the cheerful holiday lights were gone, replaced by the bleakness of winter. She parked outside the Jenkins house, which now appeared abandoned. The windows were dark, and the snow on the driveway was untouched. As she approached the front door, she noticed it was slightly ajar. "Hello?" she called out, but her voice echoed through the empty halls. The air inside was colder than before, and the silence was deafening. Anna felt a strange pull, almost as if something was guiding her. Without hesitation, she walked straight to the basement door. The basement's secret. The basement was darker than she remembered, the shadows thicker and more oppressive. As she descended, the music box in her bag began to play on its own. Its haunting melody echoed in the confined space, and Anna felt a cold wind swirl around her. The small wooden door at the end of the basement was open again. This time, the room inside wasn't empty. There was a single candle burning on the floor, its flame flickering as if threatened by an unseen presence. Anna stepped inside, cautiously. On the bed lay a small, tattered teddy bear, its fur matted and worn. Next to it was a piece of paper with a child's handwriting. "They won't let me rest until they pay." Anna's hands trembled as she read the note. "What do you want me to do?" she whispered, her voice cracking. The candle flickered violently, and the shadows on the walls seemed to come alive. Suddenly the room was filled with the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming down the stairs. The confrontation. Anna spun around, but no one was there. The footsteps stopped just outside the door, and then a voice, deep, guttural, and filled with malice, spoke. "You shouldn't have come back." Anna's flashlight flickered and the temperature plummeted. She clutched the music box, its melody now distorted and eerie. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The voice laughed, a chilling sound that seemed to rattle the very walls. "The girl isn't the only one trapped here. She was taken for us, and now you will be too." The door slammed shut, and the room plunged into darkness. Anna screamed as the shadows closed in, their icy touch paralyzing her. She could hear the little girl's voice, faint but desperate. "Fight them. Don't let them take you." Summoning all her courage, Anna opened the music box and let its melody fill the room. The shadows recoiled, writhing in pain, and the room was bathed in a soft, golden light. A temporary escape. When Anna woke up, she was lying on the basement floor. The music box was beside her, its lid closed. The shadows were gone, but the sense of dread lingered. She stumbled out of the house, vowing never to return. But as she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't over. The girl's voice still echoed in her mind, a reminder that she was still trapped. And so was something far more sinister. Anna's return to the Jenkins house had shaken her to the core, but it also ignited a desperate determination to uncover the truth. She couldn't let the little girl's spirit suffer any longer, nor could she ignore the dark entity lurking within the house. After weeks of restless nights and constant research, Anna discovered something startling. A series of old archived newspaper articles told a grim tale about the Jenkins property. In 1910, a wealthy family named the Crawfords had lived there. On Christmas Eve that year, their 6-year-old daughter, Mary, had gone missing. Her body was never found, but whispers of occult rituals and dark practices surrounded the Crawfords. Anna realized the girl in the basement was Mary Crawford. The note she'd found, "They won't let me rest until they pay," suddenly made sense. Mary wasn't just a trapped soul. She wanted vengeance. But against whom? A cryptic clue. Among the articles, one caught Anna's eye. It mentioned that after Mary's disappearance, the Crawfords had mysteriously vanished. Some believed they had fled, while others claimed the house had consumed them. But one detail stood out: the mention of an unmarked graveyard deep in the forest behind the house. Determined to find answers, Anna packed a flashlight, her music box, and a journal to record her findings. She drove back to White Pines, this time preparing herself for whatever awaited her. The forest behind the Jenkins house was dense and silent, the snow muffling every sound. The deeper Anna ventured, the heavier the air became, as if the forest itself was warning her to turn back. After nearly an hour of searching, she found it, a small clearing with several unmarked graves. The stones were weathered and cracked, and the air was thick with an overwhelming sense of sorrow and anger. At the center of the clearing was a larger stone with faint carvings. As Anna knelt to examine it, she noticed the same phrase from the basement written in Latin, "Eos redam qui me abstularunt." Translating it later, Anna realized it meant, "They will pay for taking me." The ritual of release. The discovery of the graves made it clear. Mary's spirit wouldn't rest until justice was served. But how could Anna deliver justice for a crime committed over a century ago? She reached out to a local historian, Mr. Porter, who specialized in the town's dark past. When she mentioned the Crawfords, his face paled. "There are stories," he said cautiously, "of rituals meant to bind a soul to this world. If Mary was taken for such a purpose, her spirit is likely tethered to the house itself." Porter handed Anna an old book filled with rituals and protections. One page described a ritual of release, a way to sever the ties keeping a spirit trapped. It required an object belonging to the spirit, the presence of their resting place, and a personal sacrifice from the one performing the ritual. Anna immediately thought of the music box. If Mary was attached to it, perhaps it could be used to free her. The final confrontation. On a frigid night, Anna returned to the Jenkins house for what she hoped would be the last time. She placed the music box on the basement floor and opened it, letting the haunting melody fill the room. "Mary," Anna called out, her voice steady despite her fear. "I know what they did to you. I'm here to help you find peace." The room grew cold, and the shadows began to swirl around her. The little girl appeared, her hollow eyes filled with sadness. "You can't help me," she whispered. "They won't let you." As if summoned by her words, the guttural voice from before echoed through the basement. "She belongs to us," it roared, and the shadows solidified into a monstrous figure. Anna stood her ground, clutching the book and reciting the ritual's incantation. The entity screamed in rage, its form writhing as if being torn apart. The music box began to glow, and Mary's figure grew brighter, her features softening. "Thank you," she whispered as the shadows consumed the entity. With a final burst of light, the basement fell silent. Mary was gone, and so was the darkness. Aftermath. Anna emerged from the house at dawn, exhausted but relieved. The air felt lighter, and for the first time in weeks, she felt at peace. When she returned to the clearing in the forest, she found a single flower growing atop one of the graves. It was as if Mary's spirit had finally been laid to rest. Though the nightmares ceased, Anna would never forget the horror she faced. She knew she had confronted something far beyond human understanding, and though she survived, she bore the scars of that Christmas sleep story forever. Anna thought it was over. After freeing Mary's spirit and banishing the dark entity, she returned to her life. The nightmares had stopped, and for the first time in months, she slept peacefully. But deep down, a nagging feeling told her that the house, and whatever darkness had lingered there for decades, wasn't truly gone. By the following Christmas, White Pines had changed. Rumors about the Jenkins house had spread like wildfire. Some locals claimed to see strange lights in its windows at night, while others heard the faint melody of a music box drifting through the snow-filled streets. Anna tried to ignore it. She had done her part, hadn't she? But as Christmas Eve approached, she received an email from Mr. Porter, the historian who had helped her with the ritual. "Anna, I fear we may have overlooked something. I've uncovered new information about the Crawfords and their connection to the Jenkins house. Please call me immediately." The Forgotten Pact. When Anna called Mr. Porter, his tone was grave. He explained that while Mary's spirit had been released, the house itself was still bound by a darker force. The Crawfords weren't just performing rituals to trap Mary. He said they made a pact with something far older and far more dangerous. That entity wasn't destroyed. It was merely weakened when you performed the ritual. It's still there, Anna, and it's waiting for another opportunity to feed. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. What does it want? It wants what it's always wanted: souls. The Crawfords used Mary as an offering, but now it's searching for someone else to take her place, and since you've already interacted with it, you may still be a target. A dark invitation. That night, Anna struggled to sleep. When she finally drifted off, she found herself back in the Jenkins house. In her dream, the house was alive, its walls pulsating like a beating heart. Shadows danced across the room, whispering her name. A deep, guttural voice echoed through the halls. "Come back, Anna. The story isn't over." She woke up in a cold sweat, her breath coming in shallow gasps. On her bedside table, the music box sat silently, even though she had left it in white pines. Returning to the house. Anna knew she couldn't ignore the call. The house had claimed too many lives, and if she didn't stop it, it would claim more. She packed her things and drove back to White Pines, this time with a sense of grim determination. Mr. Porter agreed to meet her at the house. When they arrived, the air around it felt heavy, almost suffocating. The windows were dark, but Anna could feel something watching her from within. "We need to destroy the source," Mr. Porter said, holding up an ancient leather-bound book. "The pact was made in blood, and it can only be broken with fire and salt. But we'll have to go deeper into the house, into the place where the ritual was first performed." The hidden room. Anna and Mr. Porter searched the house, following the strange energy that seemed to pulse through its walls. In the attic, they found a trap door hidden beneath a dusty rug. It led to a room neither of them had seen before. The air inside was freezing, and the walls were covered in strange symbols drawn in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room stood an altar, and on it lay a book similar to the one Porter carried. "This is it," Porter said, his voice trembling. "This is where it began." As they prepared the ritual to destroy the altar, the shadows in the room began to twist and grow, forming into a towering figure with glowing red eyes. "You think you can end me?" The voice roared. "I am eternal. I will feast on your fear." The final battle. Anna and Porter worked quickly, lighting candles and sprinkling salt around the room. The entity lashed out, its shadowy tendrils knocking over furniture and slamming the trap door shut. Anna opened the music box, hoping the melody would weaken the entity, as it had before. The haunting tune echoed through the room, and for a moment, the shadows seemed to falter. "Keep going," Porter shouted, reciting the incantation from the book. The entity screamed in rage, its form shifting and writhing as if being torn apart. The room shook violently, and the symbols on the walls began to glow. With a final burst of courage, Anna threw the music box onto the altar, dousing it in salt and setting it ablaze. The fire consumed the altar and the music box, and the entity let out a deafening roar before collapsing into nothingness. Peace, at last. When the fire died down, the room was silent. The oppressive weight that had filled the house was gone, and the air felt lighter. "It's over," Porter said, though his voice was laced with exhaustion. Anna wasn't so sure. As they left the house, she glanced back one last time. For the first time in years, it looked empty. Not haunted, but truly abandoned. Yet deep down, Anna knew the darkness wasn't entirely gone. It had been banished, but something like that could never truly be destroyed. And as she drove away, she couldn't help but wonder, if it ever returned, would she have the strength to face it again?